Bitcoin's dominance has been breaking down from 66%. We're currently at 58%. There's bound to be a bounce at some point, and Bitcoin is bound to see a recovery because we can see this bullish divergence happening right now on the price chart compared to the relative strength index. And as you guys have seen in my previous videos, a bullish divergence is when the price chart makes a lower low, but the relative strength index makes a higher low, showing that momentum is slowing down from bearish momentum to eventually bullish momentum. So we should see a bounce for Bitcoin at some point in a rotation from altcoins and stablecoins over to Bitcoin. And I brought up Tether's market cap dominance as well too, and I'll bring it up for you guys again. So you can see this on the 4-hour chart because Tether's market cap dominance is forming a bearish divergence where on the 4-hour, where you can see the relative strength index forming lower highs and the Tether's dominance chart forming higher highs. So, maybe we have another little bit of a low right here with this flush out for Bitcoin's dominance to come down closer to the support that it was at on the 3rd of January, 2025, and then by the end of January, and even all the way back here, before we see that bounce, while Tether's dominance rallies up to this ascending resistance right here and then gets rejected from it. We'll see, but nonetheless, momentum should eventually start slowing down from Tether's dominance, and we should see a rotation from Tether's dominance over to Bitcoin. Now, it's interesting because this post right here from Benjamin Cowan, he talks a lot about Bitcoin dominance, and he says the reason Bitcoin's dominance is likely going to find a low soon, plenty of lows for dominance in September, and start going back up is because there are only 3 outcomes for the price of Bitcoin, and all 3 outcomes historically tend to lead to dominance going higher. Well, number 1 would be if Bitcoin bounces off the 20-week SMA and heads higher, then Bitcoin leads the bull market and dominance goes up. If you see what happened back in 2017, you can see in red right here the 20-week SMA, and you can see during the bull market, Bitcoin respected the 20-week SMA and bounced off of it multiple times before deviating from it to go absolutely parabolic to the all-time high. And if we go to where we're at right now, even back from 2020, you can see Bitcoin respected the 20-week SMA and bounced off of it. It did break below it on the 10th of May and then reclaimed it and then bounced off of it for the all-time high. And then in the bear market, we traded below it. And so what's been happening recently for this bull run cycle is Bitcoin hasn't stayed above it these last 2 times here. So this is a very critical moment for Bitcoin. If it's going to do what it did back here from the 3rd of March until the 21st of April, and also the 24th of June until the 16th of September and trade below it, or if we're going to see a much needed bounce from this 20-week SMA to the upside, because to the downside, the 50-week SMA is right here at about $95,000. Now, if Bitcoin were to sell off to that, it would trend a little bit higher and it would intersect with it if we see a sell-off further to the downside for Bitcoin, most likely coming in contact with, about $100,000 where this support would be the next stop to the downside before a bounce for Bitcoin. So if we don't see that bounce for Bitcoin and Bitcoin continuously bleeds out, well, it still could mean that Bitcoin's dominance bounces, because it would just mean that altcoins would bleed out more relative to Bitcoin bouncing. So if Bitcoin does not hold the 20-week SMA and drops to the 50-week SMA, like in Q3 of 2024 and Q1 of 2025, then altcoins will get rinsed, as they would then be concerned for the health of bull market and everyone would start panicking. In that case, a 10% drop on Bitcoin would be a 30% plus drop for most alts, is what Ben is saying. Now, number 3, if Bitcoin just sits at the 20-week SMA for all of September, like in 2020, then alts will slowly bleed out to Bitcoin and Bitcoin dominance goes up. So Bitcoin's dominance could go sideways, altcoins go down. That means Bitcoin's dominance goes up. Bitcoin's dominance could go up if Bitcoin's going down, but altcoins are going down faster. And also Bitcoin's dominance could go up if Bitcoin goes up and altcoins go up, but altcoins go up slower to Bitcoin, or altcoins go sideways, Bitcoin goes up. So there's a few different scenarios that could cause Bitcoin's dominance to go up. And number 3 might be a likely scenario. So basically, no matter the direction of Bitcoin to the US dollar, Bitcoin's dominance will likely find a low extremely soon and start heading higher. And he thinks we're about to kick off the final rotation into Bitcoin for this market cycle. And if we look at Bitcoin right now on the daily chart, we can see this bearish divergence here with a higher high on the price chart, the third higher high on the price chart, and then also we see a lower high on the relative strength index. And Bitcoin broke below this key support right here at about $112,000. It came back up to backtest and it got rejected from it. So the likely scenario is actually for Bitcoin to continue a little bit lower and for altcoins to get hit. And if we bring up total 2 right here on the right hand side of the screen, that would mean that altcoins would get hit as well too. And as you can see, altcoins are pulling back from $1.58 trillion to 1.55, coming in contact with this very key ascending support right here. So if we break below this, well then altcoins could drop further to the downside back to $1.5 trillion, wiping off billions of dollars. And so what we would want to look for here in order to see a bounce for altcoins and for Bitcoin is for some type of bullish divergence to take place for the bottom to be in for Bitcoin in this falling wedge formation. And so in this falling wedge right here, we would need to see Bitcoin show a higher low on the relative strength index and a lower low on the price chart. So as we continue in this downtrend, we just need to watch the relative strength index. So right now the RSI is at 37. We're seeing the RSI put in lower lows along with the price chart. So we're not seeing a bullish divergence set up here. And what a bullish divergence looks like is something like this, where the price chart continues lower, where we see these short-term temporary bounces forming lower highs and lower lows, and the relative strength index becomes oversold at a low that is a little bit higher than the lowest low. And then we see a bounce take place on the RSI and it forms a higher low when the price chart forms a lower low. It's just the opposite of a bearish divergence. And so we would need to see something like this take place. And it doesn't have to happen this way, right? When I give an example like this, it doesn't play out exactly to the T, but sometimes it's pretty close, you know? So for example, if I were to just minimize this and put it up on Bitcoin's chart right now, it could look something like this, where we see an aggressive shakeout to the downside and we see a massive sell-off for Bitcoin's not Bitcoin's dominance, but for Bitcoin in general, and it drops all the way down to like 105, maybe even lower, 101. You see how quickly these liquidations can take place to the downside, and Bitcoin sells off quickly, and then we see these massive buy-ups with these wicks to the downside. If that were to happen for Bitcoin on an aggressive candle, look at the RSI and watch for it to go into oversold territory below 30 and then get bought up relatively quick, and to see some aggressive V-shaped recovery for Bitcoin to do something along the lines of this, and then potentially continue lower and then break out for some type of bullish divergence to be forming on the price chart and the relative strength index to do something like this. This is what I would want to see to be more bullish on the crypto market and for altcoins. Otherwise, if I don't see this, then I would just expect Bitcoin to continuously bleed out in this falling wedge until we make some type of recovery and bounce back up to about $112,000. And so momentum is in favor of the bears right now. And if you check out what I just posted in Discord, it's confirming what's happening on Polygon's chart right now. And you guys could have made money by joining yesterday, but you're probably at the bar getting drunk, so you got to nurse your hangover before you're ready to make some money in these markets. So if we see that flesh out for Bitcoin and altcoins, then the most likely scenario would be Bitcoin's dominance sees another final low. The RSI in Bitcoin's dominance drops a little bit lower, and then we see the bounce take place because this divergence is setting up right now. And inevitably, there will be a bounce here in the short term because we just don't go down forever. I called this move back here when Bitcoin's dominance went from the 21st of July back up to 62%, and how we were going to roll over because we were simply doing a drop, base, consolidate, drop. And now the opposite of that. Once we see this rally take place, we're going to see a rally, consolidate, and then continuation to the downside as we see a great rotation into altcoins. This is what I would expect. Now we'll see how high up that rally is for Bitcoin's dominance. It could quite possibly come all the way back up here to about 60%. That's a possibility. It might even be lower than that. We shall see. But the key to understand here is this. When you're looking at a chart like this, which is total 2, the crypto total market cap excluding Bitcoin, you need to know what to look for. And you don't want to be buying into altcoins when we're in overbought conditions. For example, when we are making these recovery rallies, when you first can identify the trend and you see that we are in a downtrend since the 24th of August right here, well, you can clearly see that as we make these recovery rallies back into key zones of resistance, which are either descending resistance or horizontal resistances. For example, this is a point of confluence right here. You can see this was support on the 28th of August until the 29th of August. And so with the altcoin market making a recovery into this zone, also, it is a very strong descending resistance as well too. So that's an area of confluence where 2 points are intersecting. Plus, on top of that, you can see the relative strength index here rallied up to about 65, getting close to overbought conditions. It doesn't need to come all the way up here above 70 every time, but the closer we are to 70 or above 70, and when we are making an intersection with multiple points of confluence in terms of a resistance, that's not when you buy in. You want to buy in when you're seeing multiple points of confluence in the opposite direction, where the price is doing the exact opposite of a resistance. It's hitting support and we're in oversold conditions. Plus, you stack that with bullish divergences, then you're going to be an absolute monster. So with trading, you're going to be able to separate yourself from the 99%. So where would those areas of confluence be? Well, right here, you can see support where the price came down and bounced off of at about $1.53 trillion. The next zone right here on the 30th of August, within the same level, it respected it. And so we need to see if the altcoin market continuously bleeds out with Bitcoin, if it respects this zone. If it does not respect this zone and it consolidates at it for a bit and it goes below it, well, then we need to look further back in the past to the next zone, and then we see if it'll respect this zone down here. And until we see some type of bullish divergence on this price chart right here, the momentum is going to be in favor of the bears. And the only time that me personally, when I get more aggressively bullish in the market, is when I see that momentum shift and I see a trend change after confirming a bullish divergence on multiple time frames. And so what I would want to see is the RSI to find a low and experience a bounce. So I'm patient here. I'm going to be watching the price chart to find an inevitable low and find lower lows before we see a break and a bounce on out of here. And where that level will be does not matter, because I'm looking at the relative strength index and I'm watching for this bullish divergence with lower lows on the price chart. That's what I'm going to be looking for. And then I wait for a break of structure.